there's maybe the lead up to one of the arguments behind why they think that, they keep placing this great emphasis on universities, is there's this real hyper specialization that's going on. And so it's gotten to the point that, we previously, you go back hundreds of years and you could have been someone, or even probably much less than that, probably even decades ago, you could have been someone who could have specialized in say, physics or something like that, but you could have also been an expert in many other fields, because the amount that we actually knew about the world was, arguably very little compared to what we know about it today. Whereas in many fields, we are so far down the rabbit hole now that you can spend an entire life working on these endeavors and still barely get to the bottom of them. And so the problem with that is there's less people to scrutinize, what you're doing down in those great depths. It becomes harder and harder to disprove them. And so they need to think about ways in which you can kind of abstract back up the rabbit hole in order to prove these things. And also we've lost the polymath. And, so this will come actually back to our episode on particularly range, where it really harps on the importance of being able to think in that fashion. No longer do you have I think the examples they actually gave in the episode were Richard Feynman, for example, who was, not just a leading edge, breaking edge, physicist, for example, developing the atomic bomb, which for whatever horrendous things that causes, it's really breakthrough in terms of knowledge and things. But he was also extremely smart in many, many other fields. And now those polymaths are actually seen as being dangerous, dangerous to those institutions, because they can point out flaws across fields and point out where there's discontinuity between different ideas across different fields.
Do you think the growth stopped?
Well, framing it up in the sense of we've only progressed in the world of bits, you could certainly say yes. There's been incremental improvement across things, but
most of the improvement in things seems to be in materials.
Yeah,
we seem to have made some progress in materials engineering.
Yes, which has probably come off the back of some of those, those big discoveries. We've really brought it into the world. We've brought it to a practical level. We've been able to apply some of the great discoveries in the the hard, deep science and bring it into the world. So there's another thing they speak about, which is, we discovered quarks and we haven't been able to find a real world application for this yet. And this is something that was discovered in I think the 70s or something like that. So, and that's a really fascinating thought. So arguably, if we could have some, real life practical solutions applied from the discovery of quarks into this day and age, we might be doing we might be flying around in those cars, mate, or have that, that warp drive to get us to Mars.
Imagine the quarantine if you had a warp drive or a teleporter. Sorry, it'd be tough to. Corona would have spread a bit quicker.
Yeah, well, you might have just had the few people that could afford it to shoot off to Mars and hang out for for a couple of years and then come back to an apocalyptic bloody torn world.
Yeah, the biggest thing for me is let's dream big again. I love that idea. I think it's a very kind of inspirational thought to think, well, let's think big. Let's try and do some cool stuff. It seems I didn't realize that my horizons were so low until I listened to this.
Like how far out into that horizon you're looking.
just like, let's have a think about what might actually be possible, you know.